Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making an all-time favorite of mine. We're going to be making chicken pot pie using rotisserie chicken. So let's get straight into the video. So what you see me doing here, I'm actually making slits in the chicken because I'm going to be shredding the chicken and I'm going to be putting the bones aside for a different meal. So I basically used my knife to cut into parts, and then afterwards I actually took a fork and I kind of did this raking method to kind of get the chicken meat out, and then it also shredded the chicken in the process. I didn't really have to go back and break up larger pieces of chicken. But this is how it's looking now. As you can see, I got a good amount of chicken. I used 2 chicken halves. Next, I put my chicken in the fridge, and then I'm going to move on to my pie crust recipe. So in this video, I'm actually using half a teaspoon of salt and then a half tablespoon of granulated sugar. I'm gonna add these to my flour. For this video, I actually used a mixture of wheat and white flour, but you do not have to do that. You can use all white flour if you wanted to. To be quite honest, I actually ran out of my white flour, which is why I did this. After that though, we're going to be adding our half a pound of cold butter. You can also use margarine. I prefer to do that when I'm baking anything. So I took my knife and I actually cut this into small pieces, and then I'm going to be adding that to my flour. After that, I'm gonna do what I call the crumbling method, and that's where you incorporate the cold butter into the flour. So I'm gonna just speed this up because it took a few minutes to do, and we're not gonna sit and watch all of that right now. This is how it's looking after about 5 minutes of crumbling. Please make sure you get all of those large chunks of butter all crumbled out. If you have a child, you can ask them to help you with this process. Now for this step, please ensure you're using ice cold water. If you notice in my cup, I actually have ice cubes. I added about 8 tablespoons of ice cold water, and then you want to do this using your discretion also, so don't add it at once. You want to add, squeeze the dough together, add some more. But once I finished my 8 tablespoons of ice cold water, I actually did a squeezing method. So because it's a pie crust, you do not want to knead the dough because you're going to activate the dough. So you want to squeeze it together. This is how it should look when everything is complete. Your dough should be very tight and it should be together. It shouldn't be crumbly or anything like that. And then for this pie crust recipe, I'm actually making 2 discs. So I'm going to separate my dough into halves, and then we're going to wrap them in plastic and put them in the fridge for an hour. You want to put them in the fridge for at least an hour, nothing less, because you need the dough to rest. Okay guys, so now we're going to be moving on to our pot filling, which was actually my favorite part. So I had a stalk of escallion, a whole onion, half of green bell peppers, a small potato, a thinly sliced carrots, and 6 tablespoons of butter, all chopped and ready to go. So I'm going to be adding my butter in a large pot. You can use a skillet if you want to. This was the pot I had available. And once everything is melted out, go ahead and add your onion, your escallion. I also have some chopped garlic in there as well, and your green peppers. And then you want to basically stir this into the melted butter for about 2 minutes until your onions and your green peppers become like transparent, or your onions start to have a yellow color. After that, I'm going to go ahead and add my potatoes and my carrots because these were a lot firmer, so you want to add them afterwards. And then basically you're going to be stirring that for an additional 2 minutes as well so that they can soften. If you have any green beans, go ahead and add that now. You can add like half a cup or 1/3 cup. Now I'm going to be adding 1/3 cup of flour. So we're going to be making a roux to create like the body of the filling. And you can stir that for a minute, 2 minutes until everything is mixed together. After that, I added 2 cups of chicken stock to the pot. You can use a measuring cup just to be completely accurate, or you can eyeball it. It doesn't really matter. Just be careful not to add too much because your pot filling will become extremely thin. Now, once you add that, take your whisk or your spatula and basically mix that for 2 minutes on like medium heat until you see your roux beginning to form. If you look closely in the video, you will see that a creamy texture is beginning to form, and that's because my flour and my chicken stock are now binding together. After that, we're gonna go ahead and add our cream. So I'm using heavy cream for this dish. You can use 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream, or you can use a full cup. I did go ahead and added an extra quarter, which would have brought me to 1 cup of heavy cream. And then I'm gonna be mixing this on medium heat, and then I'm gonna be leaving it to simmer for about a minute. After that, I went in with some powdered seasoning. So I'm using some black pepper, and I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of that. Then I'm using my Goya all-purpose seasonings. Now, coming up next, you guys know how I am with my bottles. So this is garlic powder. It is not Italian seasoning. And we're back with my favorite, which is garlic salt. Do not put too much garlic salt because it is still salt based. So you just want to add a little sprinkle and then allow everything to simmer. You can turn it down on low heat and just cover it for 2 or 3 minutes. As you can see, it's getting thicker already, but we're not done yet. Now it's time for the best part, and that is our chicken. So you want to just throw all of that in there. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but you do not have to use the skin. This is just my preference. I like everything on rotisserie chicken, and I added my skin as well. I'm just gonna incorporate that, mix it up, and then let it simmer. And then once I'm done stirring all of that, we're gonna be leaving it to cool for a while because you don't want to put it hot in the pie. Or personally, that's just what I think. I let it cool and then I add it to my pie. Alright guys, so if you were being productive, you would have been doing this while your dough was in the fridge, which means that your hour has already passed. Obviously, you should have set a timer as well just to be sure it was in there for at least an hour. Here I'm using my cutting board and I just lightly floured it. And I'm using my mom's famous rolling pin that has been in our family for years. So you want to lightly flour your cutting board, lightly flour your rolling pin, and take one of the discs, unwrap it out of the plastic, and then you're going to be basically flattening that as wide as possible, bearing in mind the width of your pie dish. And this was a very hard process for me because, as you guys can see, I do not have a lot of counter space, so I struggled with this step. Thankfully, my boyfriend was able to film the whole process and get all angles, so I basically had to move around my pie crust and my cutting board. But if it is that you have a large counter space, you can just scrap the cutting board and do this on the counter, of course, after you clean it. I'm realizing here that it's wide enough, so I went ahead and I added it to my dish. Guys, please ensure that your pie crust is like medium thin, not too thin to break, but also not too thick. Ensure you use your fingers to kind of push the dough into the corners so that it fills out the dish. And here, my pie filling isn't necessarily cool like room temperature, but it's cool enough. So I went ahead and I added this. And guys, you want to stuff this baby as much as possible. This is chicken pot pie, not pie pot chicken. So go ahead and stuff that baby. Yes, look at that filling. I know you guys see my pie crust hanging over the edge. I'll explain later. Remember that you kind of have to bind your edges, so do not put the pie crust measuring exactly like your dish. You want to have some hanging over. Here I'm just rolling out my second disc, and we're going to be doing the same thing, struggling with the same counter space. Well, for me at least. And then basically you're gonna be doing this process all over again, and then you're gonna be putting it on top of your pie. So for this part, you can get a little fancy. Now, I took a fork and I kind of pressed my edges Some people like to take their finger and pinch the edges, which gives a different design, but I haven't made pie in a while and I've always wanted to do the fork method. You do want to cut some pockets into your pie, at least 6 of them, especially if it's a large pie, to allow your steam to come out, because we do not want a pie explosion in the oven. Now after this, now it's time for the fun part. So there's this thing called egg wash, where you take a whole egg, whisk it, and then you take a basting brush and coat the top of your pie. What this is gonna do, it's gonna give your pie that pretty golden brown color. Please bear in mind that I had wheat flour in my pie, so mine was like a golden dark brown, but if you're using just white flour, it has a nice sexy golden brown color. And guys, trust me, it makes your pie look so much better. So be sure to get inside those creases where you're decorating. I think I gave mine 2 coats because I want it to be extra glistening, especially because I used the wheat flour. After that, feel free to stick it in your oven for at least 25 minutes, max 30 minutes, and then you take it out and allow it to cool. Just to put things into context, we did have this dish for movie night. So in the next clip, you're gonna be seeing how my pie looks. This is how my beautiful baby is looking. And I had this with some fresh mango and carrot juice. My partner enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. My mom enjoyed it. In fact, she said she cut her slice in 2 parts because she did not want it to finish. Of course, by now, I really hope you subscribe, guys, because this is a top tier recipe. So if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!